Good morning, friends and enemies. In today's video, we are talking about 6 wide receivers that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole in 2025 fantasy football. Where they're getting drafted right now, keep them away from me, keep them away from my wife and kids, keep them away from my rosters, all right? So there's 6 of them in today's video, and then at the end, we've got 3 honorable mentions, 3 spicy honorable mentions that we'll dive into. I don't feel as strongly about them, maybe a 5-foot pole, maybe a 3-foot pole, something like that, but the top guy, 10-foot pole, 10 feet away from me and all of my teams, fortunately, is going to be Garrett Wilson. Love the player. Really fun. Tape is incredible. Great playmaker. But in New York, I have very little faith in what this passing game is going to present for us for fantasy football. All right. Currently, right now, he's the wide receiver 13 in drafts. So he is not in that, like, it would be nice to have him really in the as your wide receiver 2 tier. There are going to be a lot of teams that have him as their wide receiver 1. And it's going to be a very hard pass for me. If you get him as your wide receiver 2, cool. But there's also a lot of really good second and third round running backs that I think you're probably passing over in order to get him as your wide receiver 2. When I look at the makeup of the Jets right now, we have Justin Fields coming in, and I know the strong narrative is that DJ Moore and Justin Fields had a berserker type of season in 2023. And I think it's important to note just how pure DJ Moore ran during that season to make those things break correctly. He was consistently taking screens to the crib, long ones, connecting on an insanely high rate of those deep touchdown throws that are not predictable year over year. DJ Moore was 8 in the NFL in YAC that year, the 7th most elusive player, which is one of his strong suits, great with the ball in his hands after the catch. 8th in contested catch rate, and his catchable target rate from Fields was top 20 in the NFL. Again, very high and just not something that I think we should be expecting from Justin Fields in this New York Jets offense. You have a new defensive-minded head coach in Aaron Glenn coming over. This is no doubt, undoubtedly, I don't know which one is the correct terminology there, going to be a run-heavy, run-first offense with Aaron Glenn at the helm. Again, I get the allure with Garrett Wilson as a player, but when we start to look at the players getting drafted around him, like here are Vegas lines per BetMGM for all the guys in fantasy going near him. So you have T. Higgins up there, JSN, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin. You guys can see the chart for yourselves. Right here, Garrett Wilson is up in the 13-14 range. His receiving yard prop per Vegas is 925.5. His receiving touchdown line is set at 4.5. Now, listen, I get it. He's a PPR guy, so he's going to get a boost there. But I still think there's a drastic difference here. Devontae Adams, DJ Moore, their touchdown numbers, like his numbers per Vegas are pretty significantly lower than a lot of the guys getting drafted underneath him. And like I said, I know it'll even out because in a full PPR league, like he'll have a really high target share. But I do want to remind you that like 2 years ago, 2023, Garrett Wilson had the 4th most targets in the NFL. He had 168 targets. He barely clipped 1,000 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 32 in full PPR fantasy points per game. And I'm not saying that Justin Fields isn't better than Zach Wilson. He for sure is, but do not fool yourself into believing that just because Garrett Wilson is going to have a high target share and is going to get a lot of targets like he did 2 years ago, doesn't mean he can't be underwhelming for fantasy. So when I look at Justin Fields, like I think it's fun if you're a Jets fan. It's cool to insert him and like kind of see what happens. But Fields has never had a single season where he's averaged 200 passing yards per game. I'm just out on Garrett Wilson as my wide receiver 1. And where you're going to have to get him as your wide receiver 2, give me a running back in that range. Give me Brock Bowers in that range. Moving on to wide receiver number 2, Xavier Worthy, Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver, current ADP wide receiver 21. And yes, we are running the fade back like a fucking receding hairline, all right? When we look at Xavier Worthy as a player, I want to start off with what I thought of him as a route runner coming out of college. I didn't think he was very good at running routes. I didn't think he can get off the line of scrimmage via press. I didn't think he could beat man coverage. By all metrics, he played very well in the second half of the season last year. Matt Harmon's reception perception profile of his last year is finished. A 20th percentile success rate versus man, 16th versus press. It's exactly what I saw on film. It's exactly why I'm worried about a dude who, unless he is shoved into a force-fed role, which I think is what happened last year, you couldn't have had a better run out for Xavier Worthy. Travis Kelce fell off. Rashee Rice got hurt for the entire year. Marquise Brown was hurt for basically the entire year. If Xavier Worthy couldn't produce near the level that he did, I would just assume he was an incredibly poor wide receiver. He did well given the run out that he had, but again, like it couldn't have gone better for him. He was a manufactured touch guy. Despite his speed, his average depth of target, 9.2, was 72nd in the NFL. 70.2% of Xavier Worthy's targets last year traveled 9 or fewer yards downfield. His true catch rate, 98th in the NFL. His contested catch rate, 76th in the NFL. And listen, I get it. He's had some misconnections last year, and I think his stats maybe could have been better. Like Mahomes and him just did not have that sync. I'm just not really sure what Worthy's real role is outside of a 4 to 5 manufactured touch guy per game when Rashee Rice is healthy. And from every report I'm seeing this offseason, despite my kind of pessimism a couple months ago about Rashee Rice, like pretty much every doctor is now starting to go down the path saying that Rashee Rice should be good to go. Data favors return week 1 at pretty much 100% pre-injury form. So I'm just saying, if I have a team where I have to roll out Xavier Worthy as my wide receiver 2, which is where he's going right now, wide receiver 21 overall, I'm looking forward to the 2026 draft. We'll put it that way. Now, as we move into number 3, Garrett Wilson is not dust. I am not convinced that Xavier Worthy is a bad wide receiver necessarily. I'm just unclear about his role and who he is when he's not force-fed into targets. Cooper Kupp is a third wide receiver on this list, and I am thoroughly convinced he is dust. I think everything from how badly the Rams wanted to get him off their team to what his role was last year to his separation scores, like it was a mess. And we'll start again with Matt Harmon's RP profile of him. 3rd percentile success rate versus man, 3rd percentile success rate versus press, where he's been elite his entire career against the zone, 30th percentile. Like, he is just a shell of the receiver that he was. A lot of people remember Cooper Kupp last year. He had a few very high target, high volume games. The very large majority of his production last year came purely off of pre-snap motion, force feeding him like Worthy, especially when Puka Nacua was out. Last year, shockingly, the Rams led the NFL with pre-snap motion, used it 76% of the time. They were second in the NFL using play action, 30.1% of the time. New Orleans, on the other hand, everybody was really excited about Clint Kubiak, etc. He is now the OC in Seattle, where Cooper Kupp just signed, 23rd in the NFL last year in play action rate. They used motion 54% of the time, which is not bad, but is still 20% less than the Rams used. Realistically, he hasn't been good for fantasy in quite some time. He hasn't put together a full season where he was who he was during that Triple Crown year in years. And most of his production nowadays comes from McVay scheming up Cooper Kupp to be open for these short dump offs and motion type of things. So when I look at a team that he's moving to that doesn't necessarily do that at a very high rate, that's a huge concern. Last year, Cooper Kupp was 6th in the NFL in motion targets per game. And most damning, the Saints last year, the New Orleans Saints last year had a total of 7 wide receiver targets when that player was put in pre-snap motion. Chris Olave played 8 games last year, 0 targets when put in pre-snap motion. And when I look at what the Seattle Seahawks currently have personnel-wise, it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. He played the single most slot snaps in the NFL last year, 488. Are they going to move JSN outside and leave Kupp in the middle? I don't know. It feels like just capitalize on your strengths. Are they going to keep JSN in the middle and move Cooper Kupp outside? Because that would be a disaster for him. This is a quote from the RP profile of Matt Harmon. The biggest issue for Kupp is that he is now officially a below-average separator on the base in-breaking routes in Sean McVay's offense. His slant, curl, dig, and post-route success rates are in free fall compared to his peak. If you're wondering why a team in the Los Angeles Rams almost callously showed no interest in having a beloved and storied player who is still useful in specific ways back in the building, look no further. Making matters worse, he just doesn't have much juice or quick twitch ability after the catch. Kupp was in space on a career-low 19 receptions in 2024 sample, and it was brought down on first contact 68.4% of those plays, which you guessed it, was a career high. So listen, the addition of Kupp to Seattle was just, from a team-building perspective, weird fit. Him and JSN have both been pretty much pure slot wide receivers up to this point in their career. Cooper Kupp's Vegas line going into the season, 775.5 yards and 5.5 touchdowns. Honestly, not a high number, but higher than I was expecting them to give out. And I might even take the under on that. So you start to add all these things together. I am completely off of Cooper Kupp. The next player I want to throw in here, but I think there are just too many moving parts at this point. Jaylen Waddle was originally on this list, but the Tyreek Hill vibe is really weird out there right now. They said he won't play until August. Does he get moved? I don't think Jonnu Smith goes anywhere, but the Tyreek Hill stuff is a little bit weird, and I think if Tyreek Hill is gone, Jaylen Waddle will be a fine pick. If everybody is back at full strength in this offense, I'm worried about Waddle. Maybe we'll throw him in at the end of the video, honorable mention wise. But let's move to a really exciting young player. That's Travis Hunter, Jacksonville Jaguars, top 2 pick this year, okay? The problem I have with Hunter right now is that his wide receiver ADP is 24. He is the 24th wide receiver off the board in underdog drafts right now. And this is strictly a pricing thing for me. Like, I love Hunter as a player. He was one of my highest ranked dynasty rookies this year. There's just too much rookie hype and dynasty love pouring over into this one. Like, this is the same chart that I just made for Garrett Wilson a few minutes ago. Look at Travis Hunter's Vegas numbers relative to the other guys around him. The wide receiver getting picked one spot above him, wide receiver 23. DJ Moore, his Vegas line is set at 1,050 receiving yards. Travis Hunter is sub 700. He has 695 receiving yards, 5.5 touchdowns. He has by far and away the lowest total on this entire list per Vegas going into the year. So I get it. Like, Hunter's really fun, and we're excited about Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence with Liam Cohen and all that, et cetera, and that jazz. Travis Hunter at wide receiver 24 is insane. So this is strictly a price thing. There's just no chance I'm taking Travis Hunter over DJ Moore, over Jameson Williams, over Cortland Sutton, like none of those guys. One guy I would take Travis Hunter over is Deebo Samuel. Moves over to Washington. I just think Deebo has completely lost his sauce, man. Think about like the run out that Deebo had last year. You have Brandon Ayuk tearing his ACL. You have C-Mac out for basically the entire year. He had the best run out you could possibly have last year with all of these offensive weapons getting hurt. And if you look at the years where he's really exploded fantasy-wise, a lot of his fantasy upside comes from rushing upside. And listen, moving over to Washington, they're not giving him goal line rushes over Jaden Daniels, over Brian Robinson, probably even over Austin Eckler here. So, like, I get on paper the fit can be cool because Cliff Kingsbury, all he does is throw screens around the line of scrimmage, and that's like where Deebo excels. I think they're going to try to do that like 2 to 3 times a game. I think halfway through the season, that's going to stop working because I don't think Deebo just has the same juice that he had when he was younger. I just think this is probably a disaster in the making. If anything, it's just a little bit of a better real life fit than it is fantasy. I have very low expectations for Deebo Samuel this year. So we're staying away from Deebo. And those were the 5 on the list. I had Jaylen Waddle, and I'll give you the quick reason why. Very much similar to some of the other points I've made before with like Cooper Kupp and pre-snap motion and all that kind of stuff. This is a tweet from Adam Pfeiffer. He said, targets from pre-snap motion in 2024. This is just Miami Dolphins. You had Tyreek Hill, 27, Devon Achane, 24, Johnny Smith, 16, Jaylen Waddle, 6. Waddle just doesn't see the layup schemed looks in this offense. And this is like the problem I have with it because everybody likes to look at the stats of Jaylen Waddle the last couple of years and just look at last year and say, oh, it was just unlucky. The positive regression is going to hit. It's like sometimes when stats dip off, it's because there's a very clear and obvious reason for that. Teams played cover 2 high, one of the highest rates in the NFL against Miami. They didn't want Tyreek Hill or Jaylen Waddle to beat them deep. And when you do that, you force them to throw around the line of scrimmage. If they think that Tyreek Hill, Achane, and Johnny Smith are better players around the line of scrimmage, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but we just see the numbers with targets here. They clearly think that way. Mike McDaniel thinks that way. They see it that way. That is how the targets were dispersed. So when I look at Jaylen Waddle's career, it's like, yes, he had phenomenal year 1 and year 2 numbers. Year 1, there was no Tyreek Hill, so he was a rookie. He got force-fed volume. He wasn't very efficient. He just got 1,000 catches all around the line of scrimmage, basically like this offense last year, but he was the only one getting targets. So the volume made sense. I understand why he had a good rookie year. Year 2, you had Tyreek Hill coming into the offense, and this was the year that like Mike McDaniel was really introduced to the NFL, and his crazy offensive scheme was taking the NFL by storm. So I'm not surprised that it worked, but once you get this like really outside of the box thinking on tape for a full year, we saw what teams did. They just adjusted and it stopped working. And that's my problem with Waddle is like, if Mike McDaniel cannot reinvent this entire offense again, it feels like Waddle is the odd man out here. But like I said, if Tyreek Hill does move teams, if Tyreek Hill gets traded, whatever the case may be, then Waddle's going to be a really high floor player just because of the volume that he'll get. But if this team stays the same, if it's Tyreek Hill, Johnny Smith, Devon Achane going into the year, I'm out on Waddle. So we got those 6 players. As you guys know, every summer we make a fantasy football draft guide. It's the easiest way to make sure that you don't fuck up your drafts. And within the draft guide, we will have the entire list of guys that we are fading and the entire list of guys that we are targeting within fantasy football drafts. It is not live yet, but if you want to be notified when it goes up for pre-order, which will be a heavily discounted price for y'all, just join the email list down below. I will send you out an email when the pre-order pricing does go live. So if that's a product that you think would help you out during your drafts, I highly suggest you join the email list. Cheapest price available will be to the people on that list. Let's move to the honorable mentions. And as I said, we started off with someone really spicy, and the more research I've dove into, the less I've felt confident about this. But AJ Brown was the first guy. And I do think that when you look at the industry and when you look at where his ADP has kind of gone, AJ Brown has moved down kind of significantly. He's around the wide receiver 10 or 11 right now. I can't make a good argument for him being a top 15 pick. And I think A.J. Brown is as good as any wide receiver in the NFL. I think Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and I think A.J. Brown just on a per route, just as a wide receiver, separator, speed, yak, everything combined, is as good as those two players, anybody in the NFL. This is not about him. It's about the Eagles offense. The Eagles pass rate last year, 43.7%. Dead last in the NFL, not even close. That is the lowest rate for any team throughout a full season since 2009. 2009 New York Jets. Shout out to Thomas Jones. That was Mark Sanchez's rookie year where he had a 12 to 20 touchdown to interception ratio, and they were just trying to hide that man's. And I tweeted this out, like in Jamar Chase's best year, Joe Burrow threw the ball 650 plus times. You could see it. Jefferson with Kirk, 643. CD with Dak Prescott, 590. Amon-Ra with Goff, 605. When you look at A.J. Brown's team pass attempts, like 446, 481, 531, 459, and I said like yards per route run obviously evens the playing field when we're trying to just get a pure run out of like who's the most talented. A.J. Brown's always like number one, number two in yards per route run, but the attempts just aren't there. And when I project into this season, you look at what they did last year, the Eagles were dominating teams with Saquon Barkley. They give him the ball 25 to 30 times a game, and it worked to perfection. Why would they not run that back? The team is just too good. They're always leading. But on that note, the reason I kind of pushed them down was like they lose some pieces on the defense, some significant pass rushers, Milton Williams, Zach Ball. Like they lose some significant pieces on the defense where maybe their defense is not as good and their schedule is a little bit harder. So with those two things, maybe they do pass the ball a little bit more, but I'm still weary. So if he's your wide receiver too, you're getting him at like the 301 or something like that, great. But like the days of A.J. Brown being a top 12 pick, top 15 guy probably, just not there for me. Another honorable mention, Zay Flowers, high floor, exciting guy, but at the end of the day, like doesn't score touchdowns because they have so many other good weapons on the goal line and in the red zone, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And Zay Flowers feels like a dude who should catch 100 passes in a year, but he's really only finishing around 70, 75 receptions. And we're living in a world where receivers are catching 85, 90, 100 balls. And those are the guys that end up being top 12, top 15 fantasy wide receivers. He's finished wide receiver 32 in points per game and wide receiver 33 in points per game. And that's just the offense that he's in. Like Lamar's going to run it a lot. Derrick Henry just ran for fucking 2,000 yards. Go argue with yourself out here. I don't make the rules. I don't call the offense. Tom Munkin's out here giving these passing rates an absurd number. There's just no reason that this is going to change. So he's a high floor wide receiver 3, but you keep having to draft him year over year over year at wide receiver 2 prices. And at the wide receiver 22 or the wide receiver 23, I don't know that this guy makes sense for your team. So he's the next honorable mention. And then the last one, I had DK Metcalf on here. And obviously Aaron Rodgers just signed. I still think that he deserves to be on the honorable mentions list. Like Aaron Rodgers signing is going to boost his ADP up pretty significantly, probably to the point where I almost am comfortable putting him back on this list. So when I look at what Arthur Smith has done, like this team, the Pittsburgh Steelers team, is set up similar to the Jets offense last year, where they're going to be run first. They're going to be run heavy. They have a good defense where the offensive coordinator does not want the quarterback to throw the ball 35 times per game. We've seen what Arthur Smith does to A.J. Brown. We saw what Arthur Smith did to Drake London. You got some offense coordinators that turn water into wine. Arthur Smith turns wine into water. And that's what DK Metcalf will likely be this year. Like the target share should be very high, but even George Pickens last year was the only guy in that offense. And like, he was not fun to own in fantasy. Hypothetically, every single week, theoretically, he was fun to own. You're like, hell yeah, I got Pickens as my wide receiver 3. It just never came together for one reason or another. You're always waiting on that big play to happen. And I would argue that George Pickens is far more likely to make the big play than DK Metcalf just because he's a better contested catch receiver. He's a better, if you go by the Madden terminology, spectacular catch wide receiver. So I'm interested to see where DK Metcalf lands in ADP. If Aaron Rodgers boosts him up significantly, I'm probably going to be off of him. So those are, I don't know, 6, 7, 9 receivers that I ain't touching with a 10-foot pole. They've got to jump back 10 spots, 10 feet, 1 foot for every piece of ADP. Moving back, then maybe I'll reconsider where they are in drafts, but hate them all. Don't want nothing to do with them. Let me know some of your least drafted players this offseason. Let me know what kind of content you want to see throughout the rest of the summer. That's it for me today. I'll see you when I see you. Smoochies.